picture this. You wake up in the middle of the night, you reach over to check your phone, expecting it to be completely dead because, well, you forgot to plug it in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have all been there.
Right. But the screen lights up, and it says 100% charging. You look down, and the charging cable is just physically lying on the floor, completely unplugged.
Okay, that's deeply unsettling.
Right. For a split second, your brain just scrambles, because you know how electricity works? You can literally see the cord on the ground. But the screen is glowing. And before you can even process the impossible, your mind furiously drafts a logical explanation. Like, maybe it's a hidden battery case or a weird software glitch.
Oh, absolutely. Because the alternative, that the phone is drawing power from nowhere, that means the fundamental rules of reality are broken. And, our brains simply refuse to live in a broken reality. It is the ultimate defense mechanism. Cognitive dissonance forces us to seek out rational cause and effect. When an effect exists without a physical cause, we don't assume magic. We assume we just haven't found the hidden wire yet.
Which is perfectly said, because welcome to this deep dive. Today, you are stepping into the shoes of someone who hunts for those hidden wires for a living.
Yeah.
Someone who investigates the impossible, only to find something entirely unexplainable staring right back at her.
And we are pulling this from the chilling nautical narrative, The Signal of Griever's Point.
Yes, and our mission today is to explore that terrifying intersection where a strict logical investigation collides head-on with impossible evidence, and what that means for how we process anomalies in our own lives.
It really is a phenomenal case study. I mean, we are looking at a maritime mystery, sure, but beneath that, it is a masterclass in human psychology. It forces us to ask, how much contradictory data an institution, or even just a person, can absorb before their mental models completely collapse?
Oh, totally. And the setting alone is just incredibly atmospheric. So we're in Blackwater Bay. It's the middle of a violent, chaotic coastal storm. Rain is slamming against the cliffs. The waves are absolute monsters, and the entire town has just locked its doors.
Real classic spooky setup.
Yeah, and looming over all this misery is the Griever's Point Lighthouse.
Yeah.
And here is the central impossibility we are dealing with today. This lighthouse was officially decommissioned and abandoned in 1989.
So it's a ruin.
A total ruin. We're talking severe structural damage. The power lines were physically severed and ripped out decades ago. The lantern room at the very top is just this open, shattered husk. And yet, through the driving rain, it is actively flashing its beam.
Without power.
Without power. Bright, cold white. 3 long flashes. Too short.
And we should point out that specific pattern of light carries an immense, almost suffocating psychological dread for the people of Blackwater Bay. The townsfolk refuse to even look at it, let alone talk about it.
Because of what happens when it turns on.
Right. Exactly. There is a deep generational historical precedent here. Every time that specific light cuts through a storm, ships vanish along the coast. Local fishermen disappear. And their bodies, their boats, the debris, none of it is ever recovered.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a localized, cyclical trauma that the community just endures in total silence.
And that silent trauma is exactly why the Coast Guard can't rely on local reports. I mean, they need an objective baseline. They can't put ghost light in an official incident report.
Right, bureaucracy doesn't really have a checkbox for ghosts.
No, it definitely doesn't. So they send in someone whose entire career is built on physics, mechanics, and disproving myths. Enter our protagonist, Elena Morris. She is a marine accident investigator.
And we really have to anchor ourselves in Elena's worldview to understand the horror of what happens later. She spends her days looking at rust patterns, stress fractures in hulls, meteorological data. She is a professional whose literal job description is to look at a disaster and find the human error or the mechanical failure.
Right. She is the baseline of reality. So she comes into Blackwater Bay heavily armed with logic. To her, a flashing light in an abandoned tower has, a finite number of explanations. Faulty wiring that somehow still holds a charge. Smugglers using the tower to signal a drop. Maybe kids messing around with an illegal radio setup.
All perfectly rational.
Very rational. So before she even heads up the cliff, she goes down to the docks. Half the town is just standing there in the freezing rain, staring blankly at the cliff. Elena walks right up to an old fisherman and states her empirical conclusion. She says, someone's operating the signal.
And the fisherman's response is just chilling.
Yeah, he just slowly shakes his head and warns her no. Something's answering it.
The contrast there is brilliant. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the institution, represented by Elena, relies heavily on forcing deviations back into a box of normality. But the fisherman represents experiential data. He has lived through decades of these storms.
But why do large institutions so consistently dismiss that kind of experiential data, though? I mean, the fisherman isn't a novice. He knows the water better than anyone.
Because experiential data often sounds like folklore to an outsider. Think about rogue waves in oceanography.
Oh, right, the giant waves.
Yeah. For centuries, sailors reported these massive 70-foot walls of water appearing out of nowhere. And for centuries, maritime institutions dismissed them as sailor myths or exaggerations caused by panic.
Just writing them off entirely.
Completely. It wasn't until 1995, when a laser sensor on an oil platform actually measured the Dropner wave, that the science community admitted they were real. Institutions dismiss lived experience as ghost stories until cold, hard data forces them to update their physics.
So Elena is functioning exactly how her institution trained her to function.
Yes, she is behaving logically.
And she also has technical data backing up her confidence. She identifies the pattern of the light instantly. 3 long, 2 short. It's Morse code, but it's not SOS. It's SO.
Right, and let's clarify why that matters. In maritime navigation, every single lighthouse has a unique flash pattern known as its characteristic. It is essentially the lighthouse's fingerprint.
So SO isn't a distress call.
No, it is the specific identification sign for Griever's point. Before GPS, navigators would see that specific rhythm and know exactly where they were on the nautical chart.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to Elena, the fact that the light is flashing its historically accurate characteristic proves human intent.
It has to.
Yeah, like an IT troubleshooter walking into a severed server room. If the power is physically cut, but the servers are still humming and transmitting the correct data, the investigator's brain has to assume a hidden battery or a secret wire. A glitching wire would flash randomly. Someone is actively choosing to broadcast the SO identifier.
And that logic drives her right up the treacherous, muddy cliff road to the lighthouse to catch the smugglers red-handed.
Exactly. But the atmosphere inside the tower is where things start to get weird. She forces open this rusted, heavy wooden door, and she's hit with a deeply unsettling sensory mix. There's a smell of salt water, dark mold, and beneath it all, a faintly sweet, rotten odor.
Ugh, horrifying.
Right. But right there on the floor in the mud are large, fresh boot prints. They are leading up the spiral stone stairs, and rainwater is still glistening inside them.
And from a psychological standpoint, seeing those fresh footprints actually provides Elena with a massive wave of relief.
Wait, really? Relief? She's completely alone in an abandoned, rotting tower in a storm. How are strange footprints a relief?
Because footprints require a foot. A foot requires a physical, biological human being. It means her smuggler hypothesis is holding up. The physical evidence is confirming her mental model.
Oh, I see. Her logic is still completely sound. Okay, so as she climbs the spiral stair, she enters this bizarre environment. The interior is an absolute ruin. Broken furniture, peeling paint, bird nests in the shattered windows.
Just decades of decay.
Yeah, but scattered throughout the decay are these incredibly mundane signs of life. She finds old, stained coffee cups sitting on dusty railings. She sees fresh cigarette ash on the floor. She can even hear the low, static hum of radio equipment operating somewhere in the dark above her.
It's such a weird juxtaposition.
It is. And if I'm Elena, I'm thinking my smuggler theory is 100% validated. Fresh ash and wet mud don't scream supernatural anomaly. They scream trespassing.
You're right, but the reality she's walking into is much more insidious. She is entering a liminal space, like a boundary area between the known world and the impossible. Think about the sensory details you just mentioned. The coffee cups, the cigarette ash. Why would a supernatural anomaly generate or sustain these specific, mundane items?
That's a good question. Are they leftovers from the original lighthouse keepers before 1989?
No, the ash is fresh. The anomaly is actively producing these elements. Anomalies in folklore, or high strangeness cases, often act like carnivorous plants.
Oh, that's a creepy thought.
They secrete the scent of the mundane to keep the prey calm. The tower is projecting these incredibly ordinary human artifacts to string Elena's rational brain along. It's a localized environment designed to bridge the gap between human logic and the impossible.
And the bridge collapses halfway up the stairs, because she finds an ancient ship registry, a logbook just lying open on a desk. The pages are yellowed, filled with dozens of vessels dated back to the 1970s and 1980s.
And what does it say?
Every single ship listed has the same status stamped next to it, missing at sea. But besides several of those ancient names, someone has added fresh handwriting. The ink is still wet. It just says, arriving soon.
Okay, that logbook is the fracture point. You have ships that evaporated into the ocean 50 years ago being logged as arriving in the present day. It completely destroys the linear flow of time.
It's impossible.
Exactly. It tells Elena this isn't just a local myth, and it isn't a smuggler's hideout. It is an active, localized temporal anomaly.
And things accelerate quickly after she finds the logbook. Auditory clues start bleeding into reality. She hears slow, heavy, dragging footsteps above her. But when she turns off her flashlight, the footsteps freeze.
Oh, the tension there is just unbearable.
It really is. Then a distorted radio transmission pushes through the static. She hears very old, crackling voices saying, "Approaching harbor, visibility poor." It sounds like a tape recording from another era. She finally reaches the lantern room at the very top. She pushes the trapdoor open, totally expecting to find the culprit.
And what she finds completely defies the laws of physics she has built her entire life around.
Completely. The massive lighthouse lamp, this heavy glass and brass optic, is rotating above her. It is moving with mechanical precision. But there are no wires, no generators, no electricity.
Just impossible motion.
Yes. And standing beside this impossible machine is the keeper. He's a tall man, wearing an ancient Coast Guard raincoat that is soaked black with seawater. He's methodically pulling a heavy iron lever, manually flashing that SO characteristic out into the storm.
And Elena, still trying to cling to her authority, actually speaks to him.
Right, yes. She tells him he's trespassing.
Okay.
And his response is delivered in this flat, gargling tone, like he's speaking from underwater. He just says they can't find the harbor in the storm.
And Elena asks the obvious question, who can't find the harbor? And the anomaly answers her with a flash of lightning.
A massive flash. The bay is completely illuminated for a split second. Out in the deep, violent water, there are dozens of ships. They are vintage trawlers, rusted cargo vessels, old wooden fishing boats. None of them have navigation lights. They're just drifting silently.
But the most terrifying part is their physics.
Right. They are completely motionless. Massive waves are crashing through them, but the hulls don't pitch or roll at all.
And then the keeper finally turns away from the lever to face her.
Half of his face is completely decayed. Barnacles are literally clinging to the exposed bone of his jaw. Seawater is dripping steadily from empty eye sockets. But he isn't aggressive. He smiles gently at her and says, "They've been lost a long time. They follow the light home."
What's fascinating here is the psychology of this dead keeper. Despite the grotesque, rotting exterior, there is no malice in his dialogue. He genuinely believes he is fulfilling his sworn duty. I mean, he is a Coast Guardsman. His literal purpose is to guide lost ships to safe harbor.
But he's trapping them.
Yes. The profound tragedy of Griever's point is that his dedication is the exact mechanism of their eternal torment.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I was thinking about the mechanics of this, and it operates strikingly like a honeypot router in cybersecurity.
A honeypot? How so?
So in the tech world, administrators set up a fake network, a honeypot, that broadcasts a trusted signal to lure in malicious hackers or vulnerable data packets. The Lighthouse is basically broadcasting that trusted SO characteristic. The lost ships out in the storm are the vulnerable data.
Ah, I see.
They see the trusted identifier, they change course, seeking safety. But instead of bringing them to shore, the honeypot traps them in an endless loop.
That router analogy works on a surface level, definitely, but the mechanism here is much more horrifying than a digital trap. A digital honeypot just logs data and sits there. This anomaly actively metabolizes the crews.
Metabolizes them. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Listen to the radio transmissions Elena hears in the lantern room. It's an endless, overlapping loop of Mayday calls from those vintage ships. One voice screams, "We can't see the shore." Another screams, "The lighthouse is moving." The trusted signal isn't just tricking their navigation, it is actively warping their perception of space and reality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the ships themselves are burned, split apart, half submerged. The keeper reveals the true, cruel nature of the trap when he admits the storm never lets them dock.
Which triggers Elena's horrifying realization about the footprints on the stairs. She remembers the fresh mud. There were hundreds of wet, overlapping prints on those stone steps, but every single one of them was pointing up.
Not a single set of footprints led back down to the ground.
Exactly. Every missing sailor who follows that light and perishes in the bay eventually climbs the tower. The honeypot doesn't just trap the data, it digests it. It recruits the drowned sailors to become the new keepers. They are the hidden batteries running the impossible machine.
It is a staggering observation of a supernatural ecosystem, but Elena doesn't even have time to process it because the threat shifts from a historical observation to a deadly, immediate crisis.
Right, because Elena looks down through the shattered glass of the lantern room, and sees a small fishing boat struggling through the harbor. It's a modern boat, it's real, it's alive, and it's fighting the waves.
And the keeper pulls the lever. The beam flashes its characteristic, 3 long, 2 short. And down in the bay, the living boat immediately changes its heading, turning away from the safe channel and steering directly toward the deadly, jagged rocks at the base of the cliff.
Just a death sentence.
And the keeper smiles his sad, rotting smile and says, "They hear us too."
The anomaly is pulling the real world into its trap, and Elena reacts instantly. She abandons all her scientific observation and physically attacks the machine. She grabs the heavy rotating lamp mechanism, braces herself, and violently forces it off its axis.
Just brute strength.
Yeah, the gears scream, the glass shatters, and the beam is completely broken. And absolute chaos erupts the second the light dies.
Because the ecosystem collapses.
Yes. The ghost ships outside start drifting wildly, just crashing into each other in the dark. Hundreds of voices start screaming in unison through the radio static. Every single ambient light in the tower instantly goes black.
And the anomaly immediately retaliates against the foreign body that broke its machinery.
Elena hears wet footsteps, dozens of them, climbing the stone stairs from the darkness below. Lightning flashes again, and for one terrible second, she sees the reality of the liminal space dropping its disguise. The lantern room is suddenly filled with knee-deep seawater.
Nowhere to run.
She is surrounded by ground sailors standing shoulder to shoulder, white eyes, bloated skin, rotting vintage uniforms, and the keeper leans in and whispers, they don't like losing the signal.
Her escape is just a phenomenal sequence of pure survival instinct. She blindly throws herself down the spiral stairs. And, the terror isn't that they chase her. The terror is the methodical, calm, wet footsteps following steadily behind her all the way down.
Oh, that is so much worse.
She bursts out the heavy rusted doors into the freezing rain, gets into her Jeep, and guns the engine.
But as she speeds away down the muddy cliff road, she checks her rearview mirror. The lighthouse beam has returned. It's sweeping across the ocean. Bright, cold white. 3 long, 2 short.
Unbelievable. And the next morning brings the most frustrating part of the entire narrative. The storm breaks. The Coast Guard sends a team to the lighthouse. They find dark, abandoned stone, no power lines, no radio equipment, and the only footprints in the dried mud belong to Elena.
So the official Coast Guard report concludes her investigation by formally citing her experience as stress and storm-induced hallucinations caused by exhaustion.
Which is the ultimate institutional defense mechanism, identical to the brain rationalizing the unplugged phone charger from the beginning. The Coast Guard is choosing the comfort of a hallucination over the terror of a broken reality.
But the Coast Guard's conclusion is utterly absurd when you look at the final, cold, hard piece of data from that night. While Elena was in the tower, coastal radar systems briefly detected multiple unidentified massive vessels approaching Blackwater Bay from deep ocean waters. And then, right before sunrise, every single radar blip simultaneously vanished beneath the sea.
This raises an important point. We need to look at the physics of that radar data. Radar isn't a camera taking pictures of light. It is radio waves bouncing off physical, dense mass. To register on military-grade coastal radar, those vintage ships had to be displacing real water and occupying physical space.
They were really there.
The radar hit proves that the supernatural anomaly leaves a measurable digital footprint in the real world. The threat to modern living ships is a verified fact. But the institution refuses to acknowledge it because admitting those ships exist means admitting their entire framework of physics is flawed.
It's so easy to sit back and judge the Coast Guard for being willfully blind here. But, we all do this. We all write these little official reports in our heads every day. When something inexplicable happens in your life, like a bizarre coincidence, a glitch in your routine, a piece of information that challenges your core beliefs, your brain immediately scrambles to write a comfortable, logical explanation.
It's human nature.
Yeah, but the terrifying thing about the Griever's point anomaly is that it preys on that exact human need for a logical answer. The anomaly gave Elena footprints and cigarette ash because it knew her brain would demand them. So, are you willing to look at the raw radar data in your own life, even when it completely shatters your worldview? Or do you just stuff it into a box labeled hallucination?
Elena demonstrated profound cognitive bravery. She allowed her mental models to completely break in order to save that living fishing boat. She accepted the impossible data and acted on it.
Which brings us to a final, chilling detail about her actions. Think about the timeline of her escape. She violently shoved the heavy lamp mechanism off its axis. She physically broke the machine. The dead keeper didn't try to stop her, he just watched her do it. Yet by the time she reached the bottom of the cliff and looked in her mirror, the signal was already turning again, with perfect mechanical precision.
The machinery was repaired almost instantly.
Exactly. If the lighthouse has no electricity, and the dead keeper couldn't stop her from breaking the lamp in the first place, well, who or what fixed that heavy iron machinery so quickly in the dark? We know the anomaly's ecosystem relies on the trapped crews. Hundreds of footprints go up the stairs, and they never come down. They become keepers. But Elena broke the rules. She went up, and she came back down. She escaped, leaving a vacancy in the tower's workforce. Which leaves you to wonder, when the next violent storm hits Blackwater Bay, will the lighthouse beam just be broadcasting its characteristic to lost ships? Or will that light be cutting through the rain, specifically calling for a new logical investigator to climb those rotting stairs and take her rightful place as the next keeper?